Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Shreya Madhu, and I'm a high school student. I will start with a short presentation on the topic of ecoscaping. This will be followed by a Q&A session with our guest experts, Mary Abercrombie and Paulette Placko, and hosted by Ashwin Vallabhaneni, a fellow high school student. Mary is with Ms. McKinney's Office of Environmental Sustainability and drives resource conservation and green practices through data-driven programs and community outreach. Paulette Placko lives in McKinney and retired from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. She's a volunteer with the Blackland Prairie Chapter, Texas Master Naturalist, and the Collin County Native Plant Society of Texas. So when you drive through almost any neighborhood around here, you see the exact same thing, a massive patch of green turf or grass. It's basically the standard American dream setup that's been around since after World War II. In fact, 81% of US homes have a lawn, and that's but here's the problem. Traditional turf grass creates some environmental issues. First off, grass didn't even naturally evolve to be grown everywhere. It started off as a status symbol on fancy European estates back in the day. To keep a modern lawn looking healthy, you have to constantly mow it, fertilize it, and use chemicals to keep it pest free. And due to the hot temperatures, a lot of the water we use to water the grass is evaporated. Plus, synthetic fertilizers and gas-powered lawnmowers emit a ton of carbon emissions. And because a lawn is a monoculture, meaning it's just one single plant species everywhere, it has zero resilience with disease or unpredicted change in weather hits. Right now, roughly one-third of native plant species are facing extinction, partly because we replaced their habitats with grass. Then we also have hardscaping, like concrete patios, walkways, driveways, stone patios, and plastic weed fabrics. When rain hits concrete, it can soak through the ground, and instead it runs into the street, picking up motor oil, trash, chemical fertilizers, and dumping them straight into our local streams and rivers. So, what's the alternative? It's called ecoscaping. Ecoscaping is all about designing beautiful outdoor spaces that work with nature instead of fighting it. It restores soil health, traps rainwater, and builds habitats for local wildlife without needing toxic chemicals. So, if Ecoscape is so effective, why isn't everyone doing it already? Well, there are four common and big challenges that we face. The first one is habits. People are so used to seeing neat green turf that anything else looks weird or different at first. Number two, rules. A lot of HOAs and city codes actually require you to have a traditional lawn, restricting new xeriscaping or ecoscaping ideologies and methods. Number three, time. Switching your yard over to a full ecosystem takes time, planning, and lots of effort. And number four, knowledge. Most homeowners just don't know which native plants to pick, and common hardware stores rarely sell them. In order to overcome these obstacles, we use Earthkind's principles developed by Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. It breaks ecoscaping down into smart steps. The first one is keeping grass only to where you actually use it. So, like a small patch for your dog or a play area, instead of covering the whole yard. The next principle is, or step, is mapping out your yard's microclimates, like figuring out where spots get full sun, full shade, or collect extra water. By grouping plants together by how much water or shade they need, it's called hydrozoning, and it makes your ecosystem more effective. The next step is plant soil analysis. You can test your native soil so you know what nutrients it lacks and mix in organic compost to improve the nutrient balance. The next one is plant selection. You can pick tough native species that already know how to handle local weather extremes and pests. Efficient irrigation. Drip irrigation lines deliver water straight to the roots, so it doesn't evaporate into the air. The use of mulches. Maintaining a 3-inch layer of organic mulch keeps the soil cool, blocks weeds, and reduces moisture evaporation. And then the last one is maintenance. Using a 3-inch layer or a 3-inch cut for your lawns and using smart pest controls and pruning only when necessary can decrease the amount of time needed to maintain your lawn and increase the sustainability and efficiency. The benefits of ecoscaping. One of the most appealing parts to making a sustainable lawn is the financial side. Over a 20-year period, maintaining a non-native traditional lawn costs about $20,000 per acre in water, fertilizer, and equipment. But a native habitat only needs about $3,000 per acre over 20 years. Plus, ecoscaped homes can boost property value up to 20%. So now let's talk about native plants. Native plants are a species that naturally grew in our local region before humans started to landscape and alter their surroundings. Because their deep roots are naturally adapted to Texas weather, they are able to find water deep in the ground and barely need extra watering once they're established. If you live in North Texas like we do, here are some awesome native choices. The purple coneflower, the Texas redbud, the Texas frogfruit, and the Texas prickly pear fall among perennials, trees, shrubs, ground covers, and succulents that you can use in your lawns and yards to make it more native, biodiverse, and successful. So next up is xeriscaping. The word comes from the Greek word xeros, meaning dry. It's a designing method aimed at using a little irrigation water, often saving up to 75% than standard yards. So a common myth is that xeriscaping means zero-scaping. It's not just gravel and a cactus. A real xeriscape is lush, filled with lots of flowering perennials and ornamental grasses. It also doesn't mean zero maintenance. You still need to do some seasonal pruning and weeding, but you don't need to lawn it or mow your lawn every single week. So we can take this even further with concepts like permaculture and pocket forests. Pocket forests are created when you plant native saplings really close together, like about 3 to 4 trees per square foot. Because they compete for sunlight, these mini pocket forests grow about 10 times faster, absorb 30 times more CO2, and 100 times more biodiverse than standard tree plantations. To start making our own lawns more sustainable, you can organize your own yard into zones. For example, Zone 1 surrounds your home. You can use rain barrels, herb gardens, and vegetables in this area to maintain a nice zone close to your common use places. Zone 2 has food forests with fruit trees and berry bushes. So it's semi-dense and it's a good companion for perennials. Zone 3, a pocket forest or native tree canopy for shelter and wind reduction. And Zone 4 and 5 can be used to implement rain gardens, natural swales, and untouched wild patches. So if you're ready to start your own environmentally sustainable ecoscape, the first step would be to audit your landscape. So before you even touch a shovel, you should take a stock of what's currently in your yard and calculate its environmental footprint. For example, check your hardscaping. things like concrete or stone pavers actually create a high carbon footprint. Because of the fossil fuels used to cut and ship them, a popular tool you can use to calculate your carbon footprint is climate positive design. You can input the things in your yard and it will give you a report of what you can do to offset the carbon footprint. Step 2, maximize and prep the space. So you can look at all available areas that could mean like your front yard, a green roof, a living wall, or even windowsills and fire escapes if space is right. Then prep the site. Like, for example, you could pull weeds, you can remove loose rocks, clear out thick brush to create a clean starting point for your new plants. Step 3, you can build soil health. Because soil is the foundation of your garden, ideal soil is very important. The, the perfect soil is a crumble-friendly blend of sand, silt, and clay. Get your soil tested through your local county extension office, like the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension office, to check its nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium levels. These three elements are very important to plant growth and nutrition. If you find that something is less or needs to be implemented more in your garden, you can add organic compost to feed the soil naturally instead of using chemical fertilizers. And finally, to finish your soil health, you can put down a 3-inch layer of natural organic mulch over bare soil. This holds in moisture, insulates roots, and stops weeds from popping right back up. So now I want to talk more about weeding, feeding, and the mulch you add to your yard. A lot of people think that having a healthy yard means spraying chemical weed killers and synthetic fertilizers, but you really don't need any of that. Instead of synthetic fertilizer, use compost. It acts like a rich, slow-release food for your soil without polluting waterways. For pests, bring in natural predators. Use row covers or make a simple non-toxic spray rather than harsh chemicals. Try dealing with weeds by pulling them by hand or laying down cardboard or old rugs that are 100% cotton um, before mulching to prevent weeds from popping up. So that's why mulch is important, and as well as weeding and feeding, because it improves the health and like it makes it easier to maintain your like property and your ecoscape. So now we're going to talk about plants, wildlife, and water. Another huge myth, or sorry, the actual like living elements of your ecoscape are the plants, animals, and how the water all tie together. That's why it's important to always choose species matched specifically to your yard's sun, slope, and soil type. A great tip is to start plants from seed when you can, because it builds better genetic diversity, making them much more resilient against like heat waves, freezes, or local pests. You can pick a mix of native ground covers, flowers, shrubs, and trees. This combination provides both food like nectar and seeds and shelter for native birds, pollinators, and beneficial insects. If you ever get stuck trying to figure out what to pick, organizations like the Native Plant Society of Texas or the Texas Master Naturalists have guides online. So now to incorporate the water. Using drip irrigation and a method called cycle and soak, where you split watering into shorter cycles so the water actually sinks into heavy clay soil instead of running off. You can also add rain sensors so your system automatically turns off when it rains, so it prevents water loss and water wastage. You can also set up rain barrels to harvest rainwater instead of like reusing irrigation when it's not needed. So, another huge myth or misconception about sustainable yards is that they look messy or unkept. You can make an eco-friendly yard look super clean, modern, and intentional by using a few simple design tricks. The first one could be using low walls or defined borders made from recycled stone to frame your plant beds. It gives the yard a structured, deliberate look. You can also add pathways made of gravel or wood chips, cutting through native grasses so it feels like a planned garden, not just wild growth. Anchor the space with focal points like a big decorative boulder, a nice garden bench, or a rain garden with solar lights around it. And finally, you can also mix flowering perennials, architectural plants, and edible herbs at different heights to create visual layers and textures. Now comes the best part is maintaining this look. Actually requires less effort than a traditional lawn. You have set your motor blades high around 4 inches so you don't stress the grass roots, keeping your grass more healthy and alive. You leave fallen leaves on the beds so their nutrients recycle naturally into the soil over time as they compose. You can also do a quick seasonal weeding before weeds turn into seeds. And if you can prune your bushes once a year. And just make sure to check your drip irrigation every now and then for leaks or clogs. So now that we know about ecoscaping, we would like to introduce and show how we're already seeing this happen right here in Dallas and across North Texas. Check out these real success stories. The first one is Oak Cliff Pollinator Haven. Homeowners replaced grass with layered Texas redbuds and autumn sage to help migrating butterflies. Another one is the Kessler Park Xeriscape. There they swapped thirsty grass for red yucca and prickly pear, dropping outdoor water use down to almost zero. The third one is M Street's Rain Garden. It's a dry creek bed filled with rocks and switchgrass to solve pooling water issues caused by heavy clay soil. And finally, we have Lakewood Native Meadow. It replaced a thirsty St. Augustine grass lawn with a pocket prairie instead. Black-eyed Susans, purple coneflowers, and blue grama grass. This also cut municipal water waste and runoff. So, if you are interested, a really great way to appreciate our natural surroundings is by certifying your own ecoscape as a certified wildlife habitat through the National Wildlife Federation. To get certified, your yard just needs to provide 3 sources of food, 1 water source, um, 2+ areas of cover, places to raise young, like nesting boxes, caterpillar host plants, or other like small ponds. And you need to use 2 or more sustainable practices like composting, eliminating chemical pesticides, or using natural or rain harvest. So once you fill out the checklist online and pay a small $20 fee, you can get an official sign for your yard that educates and inspires your neighbors to do the same. This brings my presentation to a conclusion. Thank you guys so much for listening. Now we're going to move on to the Q&A section. So the first question, uh, Ashwin, would you like to go?
Yeah.
Would you like to start?
So the first question is, how many yards have been treated with synthetic fertilizers and weed killers for years, resulting in nutrient deficient soil? And are there any ways to restore the soil health so that newly added plants can thrive?
I'll go first. So, one of the best ways to rejuvenate soil health is compost. So, compost, compost, compost. Um, yeah, you can spread it thinly and rake it into your lawn. You can use it to mix into your potting soil. You can use it to put a layer on top of all of your flower beds. And as often as you are able to obtain or purchase compost, it really, really helps. Mary?
Absolutely. Yes. And like Paulette said, laying it on top of your soil is best. You might read to break your soil, especially if it's clay, to break the soil up. But I would recommend not tilling the soil, not breaking it up, but just layering that thick compost on top. Another thing to think about with soil is it can naturally fix itself over time, but we can certainly help. Plants like partridge pea are what are known as nitrogen fixers. There are other native nitrogen fixers, but this plant will actually pull nitrogen from air using a symbiotic relationship with bacteria in the soil. And then as it dies, it adds that nitrogen back to the soil over time. So there's a lot of different ways that we can improve our soil's health, but reducing overwatering and adding organic layer on top without breaking the soil as we do it, so as not to release any more nutrients from the soil, whatever may be remaining from all of those past treatments.
Another couple of things you can do for free is if you have trees in the fall, do not collect the leaves and give them
Yes.
to the city, or heaven forbid, put them in the trash can. Use those leaves in somewhere in your landscaping. If you have a lawnmower, you can chop the leaves and use that as mulch, free mulch, or you can just put them whole and just cover any, like I use them, all the extra ones under my bushes instead of mulch, buying mulch and putting it under my bushes. And in time, they will break down and produce excellent addition to your soil. Another thing that Mary quickly mentioned that I firmly believe in is not tilling. A lot of people believe that the answer to a new garden bed is to till and mix the soil up, but that actually does more harm than good. The soil is an ecologically, it's a little complex environment, and things like microorganisms and fungus build up and have little communities in there. And although it's fine to, of course, when you plant, you're going to dig, but to just till for the sake of mixing up the soil is really not necessary. And it's a lot of extra work you can avoid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the next question we have is, what is cycles and soak watering, and why is it better than just running sprinklers down for 30 minutes straight?
Oh, I can start on this one. So cycle and soak, especially in an area like in North Texas, we're in McKinney area, what's called the Blackland Prairie. It's called Blackland because the land is literally in many areas black. It's because it's clay. A lot like the clay that you might bake to turn into like a pot. And so it can crack in the heat and it swells up when it's very moist, but it doesn't get moist quickly. If you've ever worked with clay, it takes a lot of water, too much water, and it adds very slowly to the actual clay content. So we cycle and we soak slowly to get the water to go down into the clay. Watering maybe every zone at 5 minutes with an hour break in between. That's just an example. But it slowly gets the water to trickle into the clay rather than doing 30 minutes at a time where the water can run off and then carry seeds. Maybe your mulch can float away sometimes if it's too much water, uh, or nutrients away down the drain and adding to our creeks. I don't know if I overdid it, Paulette.
Yeah, I can think of anything to add. So yeah, that one thing about Mary mentioned the blackland prairie soil and the heavy clay soils. Although they can be a gardening, watering challenge, and sometimes messes with our foundation, they are very healthy soils. They have a lot of organic material. That's why they're so black. And so they are good, healthy soils, and they will support native plant growth very well. It's just that they do present some challenges.
And the native plants have very deep roots. So if we can water deeply rather than all at once and a lot of it running away, then we can actually maintain those plants' health, right?
Hmm.
Other than just your yard.
Yeah, think of the plant roots, those deep plant roots, like a wick down into the soil. So when you put the moisture on it, it draws it down deep down into the soil.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. The next question is, what is pre pre permaculture, and how do I use companion planting in a small garden?
Mm. You want to go first, Paulette?
Yeah. So permaculture is designing your landscaping in such a way that you incorporate different healthy aspects. If you want to have vegetable gardens, you can work with nature instead of against it. When you're gardening, when you're trying to produce vegetables, you can plant things together that support each other. An example is tomatoes and corn. You would not plant together because they have the same harmful pests. Um, so you can design systems that work with your environment instead of against it.
Yes. I would say it's an approach to land design that would incorporate not just wildlife needs, but human needs as well. So if you think of it like the world is our grocery store, most of the things we get, fabric, the clothes that we wear, we may forget that it's all grown. So permaculture looks at the world as this big grocery store for us, and we want the shelves not only full for ourselves, but for pollinators and for wildlife. And so, the goal of permaculture would be that harmonious balance for all of those organisms. Another way to say it is just enough for you, me, and the bees. Um, but another way that you can balance your plants together. Some plants are draws to some pests. So say like some varieties of milkweed will still thrive even though they pull in a lot of aphids. So if you have a plant that you're growing that you want to eat, you can plant a plant that may get a similar pest to it, and have that be the block. So the aphids all go on the milkweed. You don't intend to eat that. The caterpillars do. They don't mind the aphids as much as you might. And then you'll plant what you want. And so that would be a companion example uh, in a small space.
And building off of Mary's example of the aphids eating your milkweed, when you plant native plants and you're working them into your landscape design, uh, you have to remember that the goal is to support that ecosystem, which is going to include some animals eating some of your plants. So having pristine leaves on all of your landscaping is not the goal. As a matter of fact, being open to the entire wildlife situation and welcoming some interesting insects into your yard, all of those caterpillars that eat your plants are going to become either a moth or a butterfly that's going to support other parts of the food chain, birds and lizards, and all of those things are interesting as well. Um, and leaving a little space for the home for some of those things. So instead of, like, if you have a tree that dies and you need to cut it down, if you can't leave the tree like you would in a forest, at least leave it, like you could chop it into logs, make sort of an attractive log pile where insects can use that wood as home. Lizards can live in that log pile or a rock pile or something like that.
Mhm.
So think of that they have to have groceries, but they have to have a place to live as well, some undisturbed areas.
Very true.
Okay, the next question is, what are the actual real-world benefits of certifying my yard as a wildlife habitat?
Hmm. So the real world benefits, it is like a drastic cut in cost and maintenance time spent over time versus having a regular maintained yard. There is a financial benefit over time to installing a wildlife habitat. Another benefit may be I think at least an increase in experience and nature experiences are proven to be good for your physical and mental health. So, increasing your exposure to the natural world and having ready access to it outside is very good for your body, and is shown to decrease stress hormones and it can sometimes be just as effective as medication for regulating stress, according to the National Institute of Health. So, I would say those are some of the real world benefits, maybe some of the more obtuse or unique ones.
Mhm. When you apply for one of those certifications, you can get yourself a sign, um, and that a sign goes along with those intentional indicators of that this landscape is deliberate. Because let's face it, when you do this kind of ecosystem landscaping, it's not the same as the highly manicured lawns that might be the majority of that HOA. And so the sign sort of educates your neighbors when they're walking the dog and like, oh, what are all those, wild looking plants? Oh, look, this is a monarch environment, or this is a certified wildlife environment. The sign helps you indicate that this is deliberate. And if you and your in your presentation you mentioned the HOAs commonly do have requirements for the height of the lawn, or not allowing weeds. And if somebody comes from the HOA and challenges you, you can show this certification that, hey, this is not an unkept weed. This is a deliberate landscape environment that not only supports wildlife, it's drought tolerant, uses less water, it's a municipal advantage. So it can support things like that as well.
Yes, so you use a lot less water, and that way your bill for water is definitely a lot lower. I will say on my block, when I implemented just a small corner of my property became wildlife habitat, it became a bragging right, frankly. And my neighbors who have statues or artwork of butterflies and love to see the monarchs were very excited when I had 30 visit my blue mist flower at one time, only being on my block for about 2 years at that point. Just very quickly, when they found me, they all found me, it seems. So, there's a lot of financial benefits. There's mental health and physical health benefits. It can also improve the value of your home as well, done right. Beautiful gardens and outdoor spaces are very valuable, especially in North Texas, where we think often xeriscaping is that very dry, or it's a green desert, just a lawn. The beautiful blooms and flowers are highly desired, for sure.
Our final question is, how can small space or container gardens practice sustainable wildlife-friendly gardening on a patio, balcony, or porch?
Mm. I'm gonna go palette, and you want me to go?
You can definitely, even with one container, you can make a difference. One of the problems with our environment is huge spaces between the wild areas. And if you just use a couple of containers on an apartment balcony, you can fill them with some native plants, blooming plants, and you give the say butterflies a chance to find a little spot where they can rest and recover on their migration. Um, any little bit can make a difference. So you can definitely use container gardening. You can mix in some compost into your potting soil instead of using fertilizer, and plant a couple of native plants, try some out, and see what you get.
Absolutely. So, every little bit counts. Every little single tiny bit. When we think of some creatures, say the hummingbird, it beats its wings. It can beat its wings up to 200 times within 60 seconds. So its metabolism is very high and it has to find food very often. So every little bit helps along the way. Um, as an anecdotal evidence here in McKinney, I was very shocked and surprised when my roadside apartment a couple of years ago um, had a hummingbird visitor. I had planted a coral berry, put up a little vine, and I thought, this is such a small space, I wonder if this really matters. And then I had a hummingbird visit, and I mean, I was maybe 10 steps from a 45-mile-per-hour road. So I really thought that it would have been um, maybe there was no point, but to see that it actually did matter and it helped that hummingbird. And then I had more pollinators come over time. The habitat fragmentation we talk about is think about a puzzle piece or a puzzle, and it's been broken into many pieces and it's across the table. Every single time we can fill in any part of that map, any part of that um, puzzle, the better. So every patio, every balcony, if you just do pots, you can add compost on top over time, organic compost to keep the nutrients high. But many of our perennials will readily come back. And it certainly does make a difference, and it's a big help.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Mary and Paulette, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank
This is
you.
wonderful.
Yes, thank you very much for joining our webinar and taking part in our presentation. It's very insightful, your knowledge, especially in the Q&A.
You're very welcome.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much.